What's up, family? Welcome back to another legendary reaction video. So we got RFK Jr. appearing on Fox and Friends to discuss 4 substances in your food you should avoid at all costs. In addition to explaining how dangerous substances exposed to the everyday American can be detrimental to your health, alongside cost you financially from a healthcare perspective. So RFK Jr., as we know, part of the Kennedy family, was running for president, dropped out, supported Donald Trump. The context of this video I will present, I believe he should be a part of and play a vital role amongst the FDA to be able to oversee or some type of position in regards to the quality of food or something cabinet-wise to prevent obesity and the widespread of drug addiction amongst Americans. So with no further ado, family, check this video out.
Why should people be worried about these kind of products?
Seed oils are one of the most unhealthy ingredients that we have in foods. And seed oils, the reason they're in the foods is because they're heavily subsidized.
I usually use extra virgin olive oil, but most of the time I've been using avocado oil for the most part, which are more healthier because canola oil and seed oil is definitely unhealthy.
Very cheap, but they are associated with all kinds of very, very serious illnesses, including body-wide inflammation.
Right.
Which affects all of our health. It's one of the worst things you can eat, and it's almost impossible to avoid. If you eat any processed food, you're going to be eating seed oil.
Right, and it's interesting the government subsidizes it. Why would the government want to subsidize something that
Interesting question.
make people sick?
Good question. See, family, the government does things that may seem not to make sense, but the government placed a subsidy on tobacco farmers, for example. And then they'll sponsor anti-smoking campaigns at the same time. So there it goes to tell you that the government does a lot of things that do not make sense. As I gave you that example, let alone the same question that she just asked Robert Kennedy Jr. in regards of why would the government do things like this to make people sick? And basically marketing is paid to promote don't smoke, but tobacco farmers are paid to grow tobacco. Does that make sense either? So think about it for a second, and I want to ask you guys a question. How many times can you tax on a dollar, right? You have property taxes, sales taxes, taxes on groceries, capital gain taxes. It's all a way to control how you spend your money by the dollar to be retaxed and retaxed and retaxed again, right? To keep you enslaved. So if you go grocery shopping and you pay 6% sales tax on that, and then a tax on whatever you're doing, then the rest of the mortgage, for example, you may pay on your mortgage or wherever the rest of the money that you have after you done paid that 6% sales tax going grocery shopping, and you decide to invest that money in paying your mortgage or whatever the case may be, then the rest of that mortgage from that gets invested, right? Like I said, the money that you just end up paying, the leftover money that you have after paying your groceries, you may pay your mortgage or your bills. And if you make money off that money that was already taxed, if you make money off that money that's already taxed, because you're paying your mortgage and stuff like that, that's reinvested to whatever you're trying to get to, that gets taxed again. So like I said, let's backtrack a little bit to what I just said, because I don't think you guys hearing me. You pay 6% sales tax on groceries. Whatever the rest of the money you have, you reinvest that into paying your mortgage or whatever the case may be. That reinvested money that you have left over after your groceries gets taxed again. So all the money goes back to the federal government. Everything that you're doing, basically paying for the privilege of living in America, because the dollar is continuously getting taxed until it comes back to the federal government. And I'm going to tie this all together. I know you guys like, where is he getting at with this? So obviously the control on how you spend your money on a regular basis is taking place by the government, right? Because continuously the dollar is getting taxed. So the money goes back to the federal government. Just for example, your check is getting taxed before you even get it. So the dollar getting retaxed and retaxed until all the money goes to the government keeps you enslaved and allows for you to keep working. And no matter how much money you make, you're always feeling behind the 8 ball, right? And the only time a tax break is given is when they incentivize us to put more money back into the economy by spending money. So in that situation, family, do you guys feel like not only do you feel controlled, but you feel limited and restricted on how much money you can spend based on you being enslaved and have to continuously working as they're taxing on the dollar every single time? The sense of freedom, right? So when you do have that tax break, you have the sense of freedom. That may lead to frivolous spending because now you finally have some money after feeling like you were behind an 8 ball for so long, even though, like I said, they're incentivizing us, if they do give us a tax break, to put more money back in the economy. So spending it however, because they know at the end of the day, that's like, for example, a person that never had money and they get boatloads of money and they don't know what to do with the money, they'll frivolously spend it. For example, the person that never had $1 million and they win the lottery, usually they go broke within a couple years because they never had that money before. And they feel a sense of freedom and frivolous spending. And then it leads to bad habits. The habit of maybe eating trash food for some people, and they may not be aware of how bad it is. Then it leads to other bad habits. For example, you feel always behind the 8 ball, no matter how much you work. And then the most people I ask, why do they smoke? They say because of stress. So just imagine the stress and the intensity, and let alone the pressure of always feeling behind. So even though they're promoting to you that not to smoke, and then they're subsidizing for tobacco farms to basically make tobacco and the things that are bad for you in regards of cigarettes and so forth, they know when you do get that tax break and you do get the freedom to spend your money, you're not going to spend it accordingly because you have some freedom. When you were so restricted and limited for a long time and accumulated bad habits of eating bad food, because bad food honestly is cheaper in a way, right? So let's continue, family.
And then in the end, we all end up paying for that in terms of healthcare costs, which are skyrocketing.
Yeah, because that is a direct result of corruption. About 75% of FDA's budget comes from regulated industry, and that means food processors and pharmaceutical industry. All of them profit from a sick population.
Exactly.
A big item that, and by the way, it's getting very expensive, are cereals. Why is the food coloring in particular bad?
Food coloring, you see here yellow food coloring, that is a petroleum product. It's associated with really, with depression. It's associated with autoimmune injuries and ADHD.
Yeah.
See? My point, family. He just said food coloring is associated basically with diabolical disorders. You got like ADHD, also depression. And depression, along with you always feeling enslaved on how you spend your money, that can lead to you being stressed, also correlating to being depressed. So when you have a sense of freedom and they give us a tax break to incentivize us to put more money back in the economy, and you want to feel relieved and you want to feel some sense of release from stress or depression, you end up going towards a bad habit. In the midst of you being stressed out for so long, you accumulated a bad habit of maybe smoking. But then they're campaigning to you, don't smoke. Make it make sense. That's like an individual that's succumbed to or a child that succumbed to poverty out of their control, and they have to eat whatever they can eat. And usually the food that they eat is trash because it's easier and it's accessible, and that's how they'll put food in their stomachs so they won't have to feel their stomachs rumbling or growling again. You get what I'm saying, family? When you're limited and you're restricted, you succumb to whatever you have access to. And if the bad things are more accessible, then that's what you will embrace. And you will have a habit of embracing until you break that habit. And chemicals are used over here because, for example, Fruit Loops, right? All the loops are different colors. You can color them naturally, but to the government, it will cost more. So let's save a fraction of the penny so they are able to save millions of dollars, but still sustain mass production and making sure the product gets out on the shelves in the stores, right? From a business perspective, that's successful, right? But your health and American people and everyday American people is the result of it. So more money going back to the government again, in regards of the government worrying about making sure they get more money coming back to them, not necessarily your health. See, a lot of people get it misconstrued. He just said that basically the pharmacy companies and the medical field as a whole and the FDA, the Federal Drug Administration, they thrive and get their success from a business perspective off of the sick population. When you go to a hospital and they give you things like Ensure if you lose weight, Ensure, if you look at the back of the label, which is all scientific, I have this methodology where when I go to the store and I can't understand all those scientific words on the back of the label, because you got to talk to me like I'm a C+ student, talk to me like I'm a child, or I should be able to read things in simple words like if I was a child over again. If the words are not simple and they're all scientific, I put it back on the shelf. You know? And at the end of the day, we have to realize, and I think people get misconstrued, that we are responsible for our health and the knowledge of it, as you can see, because they're not giving us the right information to take care of our health, let alone have the knowledge to do so. Either way you do it, when you're in that hospital bed, unfortunately, for individuals who are, and, I always advocate for the sick to get better. I don't wish that on nobody, the pain and stuff that comes with it, depending on the sickness. They will give you things in a hospital that's not very much so good for you. But they look at you, and it's a wake-up call to really realize, family, we are responsible for our health and nutrition. Yeah, you have a nutritionist who has a job. But at the end of the day, they may gear more. You know that triangle, that pyramid, that triangle that you have been taught to in school of healthy foods? Is that triangle really legitimate? If they're feeding us things like this and consider it healthy? So you have to do your own due diligence and be responsible for your own nutrition and being educated in regards of what you eat, because you're responsible at the end of the day. That's the wake-up call, right? Let's continue.
Red dye also is very bad. In Europe, the same companies are producing the same products, but they're using natural coloring. But here they can get away with it. We have about almost 1,000 chemicals that are in our food that are either outright banned in Europe or actively discouraged. So you wouldn't be able to buy this kind of stuff in Europe. You ask about why it's so cheap, why it's so ubiquitous. It's because we subsidize the worst foods. We subsidize it with about 70%.
Most EBT individuals end up spending their EBT or their food stamps, so to say, on processed foods because it's cheaper and it's more affordable, let alone they're already limited on how much food stamps and much assistance they're getting to provide food for their families. So the cheaper is the better alternative, and it's more accessible. Because honestly, family, one way to avoid these poisonous processed foods are by going to get fresh produce, right? At your local farmer's market or Whole Foods. And Whole Foods means, as I put it in context, to define it for the individuals who may not understand where I'm saying or coming from, Whole Foods are one ingredient, right? There are one ingredient products. So you got fresh fish, wild caught fresh fish, right? In the sea. And then all the ingredients and the label, like I told you, they should be in simplistic terms. Farm raised food versus all the preservatives that are put in the food, like processed foods in your food that may be filled with drugs and preservatives, like, for example, in chicken, processed chicken. You have to understand the difference between farm raised and processed. slash preservative food. Look at it like this. You got a filthy environment where food is raised and produced, and you have a farm-raised environment. The quality is totally different. And the solution would be to ban all the chemicals used, subsidized by the government, making the food cheaper. And I understand, in result, if they did ban all the food, they banned all the food that had these chemicals that the government is subsidizing, the food won't be as cheap because the price of food will go up, right? But it will prevent cancer within you, and the diabolical disorders being spread. Organic is higher in the store, obviously higher price, but is it that much of a difference where you'll let it cost your health and the decline of your health, and not being able to be there for your loved ones, and not be able to be here and continue to fulfill the purpose and the calling that's on your life, to continue to be unique and be a part of adding value to other people's lives and being the amazing individual you are? Would you really let that deter you from living as long as you can and doing the best that you can to live as long as you can? Or would you rather decline and die young? Because at the end of the day, when it comes down to it, is you live fast, you die young. And in this case, if you eat and be very neglecting of your health and not educate yourself and be responsible of your own diet and your own nutrition and the food that you put in your body, then you'll die younger. But if you do the very things that you have to do, and realizing that I'm pouring into myself what I get out. If you eat like crap, you feel like crap. If you eat good, you feel good. Gut health is the most important thing. It's like the second brain. If your gut isn't healthy or you don't feel good and you feel bloated, everything else tends to follow along and follow suit with it. And I learned these things because being around kids who have diabolical disorders. My son is autistic. The gut is like the second brain. If they're not feeling good down there, they won't be able to function in regards to being able to focus, and you won't get the best out of them for them to thrive in regards of learning the things they need to learn, because then you have the excess metals and the drugs and stuff that was put in their body, which actually covers the mucus over the skull, over the brain, the mucus over the brain from all the bad foods that are building up in your body, let alone clogging your arteries, and then your body can't function to the best of the ability and more efficiently, and it's working harder, right? And then you'll die younger, right? But anyway, family, let's continue.
Our food stamp program is to process foods, which are all poison.
Right. One of the things that's interesting is you'll see on labels natural flavors, which is this catch-all phrase that I guess was lobbied for, but the ingredients in natural flavors are not really natural.
No. In our country, natural flavors are chemical products. So you can't trust what's on the ingredient label, and the reason for that, again, is government corruption. It's that the agency...
And think about it. A lot of times people might see a protein bar. Oh, it says protein, biggest day on there. That's a marketing tactic. Real protein is within chicken. Real protein is within eggs. The basics. If you really think about it, living healthy is simple. Things become more complex when you have these extravagant labels with all these vernacular words on it. You know what I'm saying?
The FDA have been captured by the industries they're supposed to regulate, and they all have an interest in subsidies and then in mass poisoning the American public.
Yeah, I want to talk about pesticides, and then let's talk about the policy. So let's talk about the pesticides and the things that worry you about. I mean, this looks like fresh food, right? What should I be worried about here?
Yeah, I mean, the irony is, like, for example, my wife loves kale, and she had the impression that kale is actually good for you. If it's organic, it's very good for you, but most kale and strawberries, for example, grapes, are contaminated with pesticides, and particularly the Environmental Working Group has found...
That is true. And we'll finish this up, family. I feel like it's important to relay this information, what I learned from my own experience as well. Apples, right? You get a regular apple from Walmart. And I had this happen to me. It's hard. It's shiny. It just feels fake. You get an apple from your local produce market. It's different. Yes, pesticide helps keep pests away from, keeping the fruit healthy in regards of being sustainable to be able to be edible to get to you when it does get transported to the local market where you will pick it up from, right? But when you go to a market or like a Walmart and so forth, and you get fruit from there and you scratch, I use a knife, and because I sometimes cut my apples. You use a knife and you scrape along the apple, and you see like plasticky chemicals. I had this happen to me when I discovered this within a Walmart apple versus my local produce. It may be a little bit of it or organic. If I go to the Whole Foods and get an organic apple, it may be a little bit of the plastic, but it won't be as much. And that comes from the pesticide and so forth. And we should always clean off our fruits, right? Simple as that. Baking soda and some white vinegar. Let it soak up in there, and dry your fruit off because you don't want it to get moldy from the excess water. But you get my point, right? They're more prone to be more chemically produced, let alone not even be healthy for you as it presents itself to be in regards of all the things that is being injected into that certain fruit that may come off supposed to be healthy, but it's not, versus the local farmers market and organic products, which are more healthier. And like I said, they're a little bit higher, but it's not big of a difference. I mean, if it costs you your life, would you rather eat the healthier apple or the plastic, that has plastically chemicals when you scrape your knife across it, believing that that apple is healthy for you when it has been chemically produced and let alone covered with so much pesticide, versus the organic one which has been covered with less pesticide and more naturalistic and coming from a fresh farm, of being farm raised. Let's continue.
Take all the dirty dozen, some of the worst pesticides on these products. So, I look at a strawberry and I think, oh, this is a healthy food.
Right.
But in most cases, unless it's organic, certified organic, you are getting something that's actually hurting you.
Well, family, comment down below you guys' insight and perspective on it. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I hope I poured some type of value into you guys' lives. Interesting conversation. Get this video a big thumbs up. It helps crush that YouTube algorithm. It's totally free. Let the love supersede the hate. Spread that peace, love, and positivity. Until next time, family, peace.